The Moving Coffins of Barbados. My name is Bill. Welcome to Night Terrors This Week. We're starting right now. If you value what I do on Night Terrors, one way to support the channel is through Patreon. Become a patron of the show by clicking on the Patreon link in the description below. Thanks for supporting the show. Welcome to T Plateau and Elder Grove, and welcome to Gotcha Man. Thank you, Verpeen. Welcome, Verpeen, and thank you. Verpeen has just subscribed with Prime. Thank you, Elder, for the report. By the way, you can use Prime to subscribe to one YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel should be Night Terrors. Welcome to Rockers. Welcome, Jordan Cockburn, who says good evening. Matthew Anderson says, hey, I thought that was Matt Wanderson at first. Welcome, Matthew. David Bryce Jr. says good evening to everyone. All right, let's get started. I hope I have it set up right under here. Yes. Here at magazine.keycarib.com is a story entitled The Mysterious Moving Coffins of Chase Vault in Barbados by Stephanie Huber. Welcome, WJ. WJ says, picking the ideal place for eternal rest is not to be taken lightly in light of this story. In the town of Oistins, Barbados, there's a mysterious empty vault in a cemetery next to Christ Parish Church. Or I guess it should be read, Christ Parish Church. The vault itself looks like many others of its size, but locals tell tales of the moving coffins it once contained. A man named, well, thank you, Verpeen, for the super chat with the dancing pear. I love that dancing pear. Thank you, Verpeen. Welcome to JRG Mighty. And welcome to Green Tea. Gotcha Man is getting cremated and having his ashes scattered over a cat cemetery. A man named James Elliott purchased what is now known as the Chase Vault in 1724. The first to occupy it was his wife Elizabeth in 1792. However, in 1807, another family by the name of Walrond purchased the vault with the intent of allowing Elizabeth Elliott's coffin to remain. However, when they opened it to lay a woman called Thomasina Goddard to rest, a shocking sight met their eyes. Mrs. Elliott's coffin was gone, and no one could explain why. Nonetheless, Thomasina Goddard was placed inside the empty tomb, and no one ever discovered what happened to Mrs. Elliott. Things got a little stranger once the Chase family acquired the vault in 1808. First, they placed into the vault little Mary Ann Chase, who passed away when she was only 2 years old. Thomas Chase allowed Goddard's coffin to remain inside. Thank you, Elder. Four years later, Mary Ann's sister Dorcas starved herself until she was unalive. Many believe she was driven to madness because of her father's abusive behavior. I believe her father actually followed her to the tomb a year later, approximately, by means of self-harm. Whatever the case, she was placed inside the tomb, and her father joined her that same year, having taken his own life. However, when workers opened the crypt to place Thomas among the others, all the coffins had moved from their places. It looked like they had been tossed about violently, as though they were feather light and not made of heavy lead. In fact, Dorcas and Mary Ann's coffins were standing upright against a wall. Immediately, people wondered whether vandals had entered the tomb and tampered with the casket. But the seal on the heavy marble tomb door had not been broken, and nothing had been stolen. After placing Thomas's casket in among the rest and rearranging the coffins to their original positions, the door of the tomb was sealed more tightly than before. Matthew Anderson with an interesting topic. I would guess not. But that doesn't mean that's I think it was part of Jewish tradition at the time, actually, to predate the marriage with consensual intercourse. Just a slight diversion there. Jordan Cogburn wants to know, oh, where is my dancing pair? Family members opened the mysterious tomb once again in 1816, this time to bury Charles Brewster Ames, a young boy. This time, all the coffins were in disarray. Even Thomas Chase's large, heavy lead casket. Welcome to Synchro 505. Michael provides all the incidental music for the show. It appeared as though an earthquake or a flood had tossed them around, yet no earthquake or flood had taken place. Even if it had, surely it would have moved coffins in other vaults, but this was not the case. That same year, Samuel Brewster joined the moving coffins in their mysterious tomb. And in 1819, a woman called Thomasina Clark. Each time, the coffins were seen scattered haphazardly about. And on some occasions, they had broken corners or were partially open. And Thomasina Goddard's skeleton was hanging out. Locals wondered if the supernatural was involved. Of course, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the character Sherlock Holmes, suggested that the restless spirits of Dorcas and Thomas wreaked havoc in the tomb, thanks to the fact that they had died by self-harm, putting their own lives to an end. Separately, it was at this point that the governor of Barbados, Lord Combermere, decided to get involved. He placed sand on the tomb floor and cemented the marble slab at the opening in place. Nevertheless, when workers opened the tomb again in 1820, the coffins had moved again. But the sand remained untouched. At this point, either Lord Combermere or the family declared that the coffin should be moved out of the vault and buried elsewhere, which they were. They were each buried in separate locations. The vault itself stayed empty, open, and unsealed. There are several versions. Oh, thank you, Verpine, for the topic. I'm going to click that now. Beautiful. Thank you, V. There are several versions of exactly how this took place. Welcome to Feathers. For example, one version states Lord Combermere did not command workers to place sand in the tomb, but rather came to observe the crypt when it was open in 1920, after the family who owned it had placed the sand. Nevertheless, a few things are certain. The Chase Vault exists, and there are death records for all the people who were buried there. The only thing left to examine is whether the coffins of those people actually occupied the Chase tomb at some point. Modern scientists and researchers have explored several theories to try to explain the moving coffins of the Chase Vault. The first is that perhaps an earthquake shook them about. However, earthquakes are not common in Barbados, and not one of them was recorded in the years of the moving coffins. That's an 8-year period from 1812 to 1820. The second theory is that perhaps the vault became flooded with water. This is plausible, since the vault is 4 meters deep, just below ground level. It's possible that the crypt became flooded with rainwater and the coffins floated around, the lead coffins, by the way, crashing into each other and causing the type of damage that workers and onlookers observed each time they opened the vault. In addition, coffins can float, even if they are made of lead. Further evidence supporting this theory is the fact that Barbados gets plenty of rain. In fact, it rains about half the days of the year. It is impossible that the Chase Vault received enough rainfall to fill it during the Caribbean rainy season, and that the water drained out, leaving the coffins in very different positions than when they came to rest. However, the flood theory does not explain how the sand could have remained unmoved. Also, it's said that none of the brickwork on the inside of the tomb was damaged from these supposedly floating coffins. None of the bricks were marred or chipped on the inside. Another strange explanation comes from Joe Nickel, a researcher at the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. Although he believed that the dates of death were accurate, he surmised that the tale was actually fabricated to serve as an allegory for the Freemasons. That's because the language used in the oldest known versions of the story supposedly contain Masonic symbols. That's an interesting... The oldest known versions of the story. We're going to check that out later with AI. Because we're going to go to the two original accounts of this story in a little bit. Furthermore, folks tell a similar tale about moving coffins in a vault of an island off the coast of Estonia. It's possible that the Freemasons used this story as inspiration and simply changed the time and place, leaving all other story elements the same. If you take a Caribbean vacation to Barbados, or a Caribbean one, you can visit the Chase Vault yourself. We'll see pictures of it coming up. While you're there, you may want to check out the beautiful historic church on the property. The Christ Church Parish. The Christ Parish Church. This being the Christ Church Parish graveyard, I guess. Oh, and that's the end of that story. Green Tea says that's a heck of a lot of water to make a lead coffin float. Hello, Ryu 1972. We're continuing this story at factumobscura.com. And a story written by Toby, entitled Chase Vault, The Legend of the Moving Coffins. And this is not a picture of it. This is an AI concept of what it must look like. There's nothing what it looks like. The real picture is coming up. Nestled in the churchyard of Christ Parish Church. Actually, that's nestled in the churchyard of Christ Parish Church at Oystons Bay in southern Barbados lies a modest stone vault. Thank you, Two Feathers, for the super chat. Super chat says, Two Feathers says, Merry Christmas, Bill, and love and peace to all. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you, dear. But in the early 1700s, as a family tomb, completed circa 1724, the Chase Vault became famous in the 19th century for reports that heavy lead coffins inside the sealed crypt were inexplicably found reshuffled and overturned whenever the vault was reopened for new burial. The story a blend of historical burial records and later folklore, centers on a series of internments between 1807 and 1820. It has fascinated both believers in the paranormal and skeptics alike. We will recount the timeline of burials and disturbances, describe those involved, and weigh the explanations ranging from natural causes to ghosts, before reflecting on how the legend has endured. The Chase Vault is located in the cemetery of the old Christ Parish Church in Oistins, a busy fishing village on Barbados' southern coast. The church itself was a brick and stone building facing Oistins Bay, rebuilt in the 1830s after hurricane damage to an even earlier structure. The vault, constructed of coral stone, is a simple arched crypt, partially underground, roughly 12 by 6 feet wide, covered by a massive marble slab that requires several men to lift. Inside, the floor was covered with a layer of sand. Originally built by the Honorable James Elliot around 1724, the vault lay unused for many decades. It was first occupied in 1807 by the burial of Mrs. Thomasina Goddard. Mrs. Goddard was apparently unrelated to the later Chase family. Her simple wooden coffin was placed in the vault on the 13th of July, likely shipped from England, and by all accounts remained undisturbed for the next few years. I assume they mean the coffin was shipped from England and not the coffin with Ms. Goddard. In 1808, the vault was acquired or rented by the wealthy Chase family, a prominent Barbados clan. The patriarch Thomas Chase, sometimes called the Honorable Thomas Chase, or something like that. The Honorable Thomas Chase had married into local planter society and held civil offices. Where's offices? Where are those offices? He soon began using the vault for family burials. According to contemporaneous accounts, the Chase family used the vault several times over the next decade. Yeah, here it says they used the vault for 13 years. This seems more accurate to me. The burials and odd happenings recorded each time are typically summarized as follows. 1807, Thomasina Goddard, first known occupant, which was contradicted by the previous article we read, which said the previous vault owner had interred someone there who was not found when the vault was opened. After Ms. Goddard's internment, nothing unusual was noted until much later. 3 years later in 1808. Next year in 1808. The following year, Mary Ann Maria Chase, aged 2, daughter of Thomas Chase. After she was laid to rest in the vault, no disturbance was reported. I believe they mean when she was laid to rest in the vault. No disturbance was reported. Her casket was an inner lead coffin confined within a wooden one. 4 years later, in 1812, Dorcas Chase, aged 12, the older daughter of Thomas Chase. When the vault was opened to receive her body, records indicate the existing coffins, Mr. Goddard's and Mary's, were undisturbed that day, although some later retellings conflict on this point. And we're going to go to the original accounts here. Presently, there's only 2 original accounts, I believe, and everyone else is embellished and copied from those. So, the same year, but the next month, Thomas Chase, the father, died suddenly that summer, it says here. When workmen reopened the vault for his interment on the 9th of August, they found a startling scene. The 2 heavy lead caskets of his daughters Mary and Dorcas had been tossed out of place and were lying head down or turned over. All 4 of the coffins, the 2 chaste children, Mrs. Goddard's and Thomas's own, were now misaligned in the crypt. What do they mean, misaligned? They're just putting his in. The workers quietly rearranged them, rehoused the coffins carefully, and resealed the vault with mortar. Yes, so his could not have been misaligned because his was going in on that day. So, another slight mistake there. 4 years later, in 1816, the infant Samuel Brewster Ames, sometimes recorded simply as Samuel Brewster. A baby related by marriage or friendship, interred that day. Once again, the vault was opened, and the coffins were found in a turmoil. All of the lead coffins, except the original wooden one of Thomasina Goddard, had been upended or shifted. The servants righted them and sealed the crypt. Again that same year, a few months later in November, Samuel Brewster Sr., apparently an adult male of the Brewster family. Within weeks, the vault was opened again, this time for Samuel Brewster's burial. Weeks, well, we're talking 25 September to 17 November, so yeah, weeks, 6 weeks. And once again, all of the sealed coffins, now 5 lead coffins, plus Goddard's wooden one, were in disarray. They were put back in order and the vault was closed as before. I assume they mean with mortar. 3 years later, Thomasina Clark, a young woman, daughter of another planter, was buried. Now the legend begins to attract official attention. The British governor of Barbados, Lord Combermere, attended this burial or its preparation, along with local clergy and officials. At the vault's reopening, it was reported that once again the lead coffins were scattered throughout the vault, some overturned, others with switched head for feet. Governor Combermere had the sand on the floor smoothed and even scattered some fresh sand to detect future footprints. Despite the heavy stone door, which was sealed with new mortar and the governor's official seal, no sign of any intrusion was found. The vault was sealed once more after standing the coffins upright, it says here. They typically stood them upright? I did not know that. Why didn't they mention that in the beginning? Should have been mentioned in the beginning, but hard to tell. It might be another mistake of some kind. Did they bury people upright on Barbados in the early 1800s? We have to ask AI this. Did they bury people upright in Barbados in the early 1800s? Did they bury? There is no credible historical evidence that people in Barbados in the early 1800s were routinely buried standing upright as a common burial practice. This cannot be confirmed based on archaeological and historical research. Standard burials in cemeteries, enslaved people were buried in typical positions on their back, in graves, often unmarked, with hundreds interred from the 1600s to the early 1800s, I bet. One unusual burial involved a single individual in a mound with atypical placement. Oh, good note from Eldergrown. I guess by upright the author means not face down. Upright meaning some of these they had to turn over completely because they were upside down. Okay. Yeah, we're going to come back to Chase Vault, Mr. ChatGPT. You're so smart. Not really. Okay. And finally, in 1820, the final opening, and it says here, and closure. About 8 months after the last burial, on Combermere's orders, the sealed vault was opened a final time. All leads suggest it was empty of any new burial. But astonishingly, the coffins were found, again confusedly strewn, except for the old wooden casket of Mrs. Goddard, which had rotten and was set aside. One account speaks gruesomely of a bony arm sticking out a hole in the side of the coffin. At this point, it was decided to abandon the vault. And other stories I've read on here have said that it was just permanently sealed, with everyone still in it, but it was permanently sealed, which is obviously on its face, compared to these other two accounts, a falsehood, or someone's just repeating something stupid someone else said. The remaining bodies were exhumed and reburied in separate graves elsewhere in the churchyard. The previous story saying no one knows where. And the sealed vault was left empty and locked. To this day, the marble slab remains sealed, and the crypt stands open and empty as a curious attraction in the churchyard. I could use a little libation. Elder Groan says, invisible pen. Two Feathers says, sounds like there was only room for one. Synchro says, how creepy to open a vault like that and find it disturbed. Indeed. These events, especially the inexplicable shifting of the sealed coffins in 1812 and the repeated occurrences through 1820, made the Chase Vault a famous oddity. The story was told in Victorian times in sensational journals and later in folklore. But it has never been substantiated by contemporary records, like church registries or newspapers. And the exact details vary between accounts. Victorian folklorists, such as Andrew Lang, noted that all published versions seem to derive from copies of an original letter by the church rector, Reverend Thomas H. Orderson, who was present for some events. Scholars today emphasize that aside from that letter by Orderson and a much later unpublished reminiscence by a certain Nathan Lucas, no eyewitness testimony exists other than those two people. And the official burial register of Christ Parish makes no mention of the incidents. In other words, the moving coffins remain a legend. And what were they going to write down in the church register for all the other parishioners to see? Thought the cat was here. She's not supposed to be. She's supposed to be locked out. Okay, people. Let's see if we can find these sources. I promised pictures. Let's do the pictures first. It's quite an interesting looking little crypt. And that's going to be Chase Vault, Barbados. Yeah, there it is, a common search. Obviously, going to be a common search. Mike also says, how many other vaults might be similarly disturbed, unbeknownst to anyone, especially in Barbados? Good point, Michael. Where's the really old one? I saw really old from an old. There's the old one right there. Yeah, this is it. Here's the old picture. Probably the first picture existing of the vault. It's an excellent resolution, too. Okay, we're going to open this image in a new tab. There it is. There's the entrance to the vault right here. And there's the wall of the parish yard, or the graveyard, right here. I guess the parish yard and the graveyard are one, basically. That wall is still there today. I notice there's no posts here around the entrance. Later on, they put posts and a chain, I guess, to try to stem curious or investigators. Here's a good view of it right here. I never saw this one before. Let's just go with this and then open a new tab. Not too good resolution. Image. Looks like that might have been sealed off by glass. Someone broke it. Looks like glass breakage. I've seen some tombs like that have glass at the top. Some crypts like that actually have glass at the top of them. I've seen one. So let's try another one. Someone's interpretation of what it looked like before and after. Before. After. I don't know how accurate that is, since there are no newspaper accounts, and I doubt those two witnesses ever drew any pictures, but we're going to find out. Well, here's a side view. Excellent resolution. And there's those posts right there. Obviously a later addition. The steps down into the crypt. And let's show that one showing. Let's find one that shows the parish courtyard wall. There's one that'll do. Also, fair resolution. This will be our last one. And there's the parish wall again. Looks like that's in better shape than the tomb. Looks like that's been maintained. The parish wall behind it. Wonder how big these trees were in the original photo. What if they appear at all? All the glass now kicked out of here, evidently. This looks like the glass is still intact. Looks like that's a pane of glass right there. Why they did that, I do not know. Yeah, here you have some big white marks. It looks like, yeah, that wall was maintained. And the question was those trees. Two right behind it, right? That might be the tree just to the left, and that's probably a newer one. That one doesn't seem to appear in the first picture. Unless they're totally different trees altogether, because these are curvy and those look like straight. What about positioning? Those are really close by, too. And those are like straight wood trees, where these are not. These like curvy wood trees. Yeah, I think those are two totally different trees. Isn't that something? Must be a very early picture. Okay, let's check out the accounts from those people. I'm going to try to use AI to help us find it. Good luck. Okay, we need the original account from who? Let's see. Where is that guy's name? Reverend Thomas H. Orderson. Okay. Where online might I find the text of the letter concerning the Chase Vault written by that guy, Reverend Thomas H. Orderson? T. Plateau says, my cousin worked in a funeral home. Jewelry would routinely go missing off the deceased. But as Romani, we would never steal from the deceased. Humans being humans. There is no known online source that hosts a full original text of the letter. Oh, nonsense. Primary documentation of Orderson's account appears not to be widely digitized or published on major archival websites. This cannot be confirmed with direct access to a primary source online. Background on the Orderson account, where you might find relevant primary or near primary text. Yeah, that's nonsense. It must be online somewhere. I'm guessing. Search Google Books and Internet Archive. Could search the Internet Archive. For transatlantic sketches, 1833 or 19th century periodicals reprinting early vault accounts. Is it contained within the transatlantic sketches? If we find it on archive.org. Thinking. How much more thinking do you have to do? You just gave it as a reference. It's doing deep research on transatlantic sketches, I guess. I can't fetch the archive directly right now, so I'll try another option. Thinking to itself. All the thinking, says Eldergone. Yes, it often does this, AI, for which I pay through the nose for an exorbitant amount each month, which I consider exorbitant. $20. Still searching on it. Eldergone says, imagine going to the graveyard and looking in on the dead. Right. Also, imagine having to haul a lead coffin down those narrow steps. From Elder. No. The signed copy account is not reproduced in the transatlantic sketches. A widely accessible online transcription of an Orderson signed version appears instead in Andrew Lang's 1907 author, Death Deeds, a bilocated story. In that article, Skeptical Inquirer, the same folklore also identifies the transatlantic sketches as the earliest printed record Lang knew about, and then quotes Alexander's passage separately. Okay, is that a direct link? Let's find out. 1833 book, unsourced narrative. Widely accessible online transcription of the Orderson signed version appears instead in Andrew Lang's 1907 article, Death's Deeds, a bilocated story. In Folklore, Volume 18, 1907. In that article, Lang explicitly says he has given a version signed by Thomas H. Orderson, Rector, in full, and then prints it as. Okay, is that the link there? The same also identifies Alexander's transatlantic sketches. Let's see if the full text of Folklore. Well, let's open it it should open in a new link. Yes, there we go. At archive.org, the same location. Full text of Folklore, see other formats. Okay. And where is that? What text are we looking for? He says what? A version, quote, signed by Thomas H. Let's look for signed by Thomas. Copy that. and go to here, and I think we'll just do a Control F here and paste that. Signed by Thomas. 0 occurs 0 times. What is this a list of? Members, the minutes, presidential address, superstition. Let's search on the guy's name. And the guy's name is Orderson. An unusual name. Order with son on the end. Never seen a name like that before. And here. Look for Orderson. It is here. Okay. Oh, here's an analysis too. Very nice. The other one may not be published because it said it was unpublished. So someone may have seen it, but I don't think we're going to get to see it, the source. We'll look for it. We'll take a search for it. I'm not. Anyway, a bilocated story. 381. In Schomburgk's History of Barbados, published in 1844, there's a similar version. He talks about Lord Combermere up here. Anderson's record. Anderson. Schomburgk says that a sketch was made in 1820, April 18th, when the vault was opened by Lord Combermere, governor of the island, and the coffins were found in wild disarray. My sketches of the coffins, in order and disorder, with Mr. Anderson's written account, belonging to my brother-in-law, whose father, the late Mr. Charles Thomas Alleyne, was in the island in April 1820, when Lord Combermere opened the vault. I am not certain that Mr. Charles Alleyne spoke of the affair to his son, but Mr. Forster Alleyne tells me he heard of it from an eyewitness named in Mr. Anderson's document. So this is more than folklore. This really happened. Multiple times. It is a curious fact that Mr. Alleyne's copy of Mr. Anderson's record varies from a synoptic version signed, not J. Anderson Rector, but Thomas Harrison Orderson, D.D., Parish of Christ Church, Barbados. This synoptic copy was printed by a Mr. Robert Rees, Jr., who got it from Mr. Orderson, and is published in a pamphlet pleasingly styled Death's Deeds. A manuscript note in the copy before me attributes the tract to Mrs. D.H. Cussons. As to Mr. Orderson, Mr. Alleyne informs me that he has examined the old record of funerals at Christ Church, Barbados. From the end of 1803 to 1820, Mr. Orderson signs all of the records. Anderson was not rector during the disturbances. This name is also a misprint. The Death's Deeds version begins with what the Anderson version omits. July 31st, 1807. Mrs. Thomason Goddard interred in vault, which, when opened, was quite empty. Yeah, that's the reference to the previous family that owned it was supposed to have interred somebody there, but when they opened it, they found it empty. I shall call the Orderson version O, the Anderson version A. A and O both record the burial of the infant daughter of Colonel Chase in a lead coffin. A and O both give July 6, 1812. Dorcas Chase buried. 2 other coffins were in their proper places. They were lead coffins. A and O agree that on August 8th or 9th, 1812, the Honorable Thomas Chase was buried. The 2 leaden coffins were found out of place. That of the infant had been thrown from its corner to the opposite angle. If any dead person had done this, it must have been Dorcas Chase. At least Mrs. Goddard and Mary Anna Maria Chase had previously been tranquil. Now comes a discrepancy between A and O. O gives September 25th, 1816, Samuel Brewer Ames, an infant was interred. Where's A? A says nothing about the infant Samuel Brewster. Where's the text of the letter? Where's the text of that letter? That's what we're after. Anyway, this guy is analyzing the veracity of the tale even back then in the 1800s. A and O. Oh, here we go. This version, signed by Thomas H. Orderson, Rector, I give in full, within our sketches of the coffins in order and disorder. Vault open for Mary Ann Maria Chase, infant, daughter of the Honorable Thomas Chase. Vault open for Dorcas Chase. Mary Ann Maria Chase's coffin was found in its proper place. Vault open for Honorable Thomas Chase. The two coffins mentioned above were found out of their place. Out of their proper places. The infants especially, which had been thrown to the opposite angle of the vault. 1816. Vault opened for Samuel B. Ames, an infant. Coffins in great disorder. This written by the pastor of the church that owned the graveyard where they were buried. November of that same year, vault opened for Samuel Brewster. Great confusion among the coffins. 3 years later, vault opened for Thomasine Clark. Coffins found in great confusion. Again. At each time of the vault being opened, the coffins were carefully replaced in their proper places, and the mouth of the vault regularly closed by masons. The following year, in 1820, in consequence of a noise being heard one night in the vault, it was opened the next day in the presence of Lord Combermere and two other persons of first respectability. And the same confusion prevailed among the coffins, all of which were lead except Thomasine Clark's, which was of cedar. Signed, Thomas Orderson, the pastor. The rector, they call him. Within was copied from a drawing made on the spot by order of Lord Combermere. Plates 55 and 55 VL. 45 and VIL. L is 50, right? V is 5. That's 45 and 46. They're trying to say 46, but they wrote it wrong. 46 would be VLI, wouldn't it? I don't know how to do Roman dates. Thank you, Elder. We'll take a look at that in a bit. Appreciate it, sir. Where were we at? Over here? Yeah. Are the plate? They show the plates here. Plate 6. Plate 6 is here. BL. I think he doesn't know. I don't think he. Plate 6. Plate 7. And plate 6. Dorcas and Chase. Dorcas Chase. Situations of the coffins when the vault was closed. Situation of the coffins when the vault was open. They just give the numbers of the plates and don't show them. Anyway. The within was copied from a drawing made on the spot by order of Lord Combermere. This third version increases the resemblance to the Arensberg story, mentioning that a noise was heard one night in the vault, which caused Combermere to have the vault opened for the last time in 1820. Mr. Orderson obviously had to make many copies and slightly altered them, being weary of repeating identical phrases. What? Maybe he just saw where he could improve his turn of phrase. Turning to Schomburg's History of Barbados, 1844. So this guy's writing contemporary with Schomburg, evidently. We learn that fine sand was laid to detect footsteps of marauders, as wood ashes were used at Ahrensburg. Thank you, Elder, for the show note. Appreciate it, sir. They started a new deal at YouTube where you can simulcast mobile and a mobile mode like this, you know. Shorts mode. Shorts like this. When you're looking at your phone like this. Shorts and or TikTok mode and or Redbook mode. If you know, you know. The Little Red Book. What made the noise? Two Feathers wants to know. We learned that fine sand was laid to detect footsteps of marauders as wood ashes were used at Ahrensburg. Private marks were also found undisturbed, like the seals at Ahrensburg. As at Ahrensburg, the coffins were finally buried in the earth, and I dare say nobody exhumed them to see how they were behaving. Schomburg gives like A4, not like O, 5 disturbances. A mentions the making of the sketches by one of Lord Combermere's. Nothing. Not given what one of his underlings, I guess, but it doesn't say anything. It just leaves it. The author of Death's Deeds says that Lord Combermere corroborated personally to her the account which she gives on the authority of a medical gentleman, a native of the island. This account enumerates 4 disturbances, not 5, and says that Lord Combermere sealed the vault with his official seal. In the Memoirs and Letters of Lord Combermere, dated 1868, the whole story is given with copious detail, the source being a privately printed narrative by a native of the colony. Where's that reference? Memoirs and Letters of Lord Combermere, 1868. Let's see if that's available. Just on the off chance. Is this document available online? Memoirs and Letters of Lord Combermere, 1868. Yes. They were commonly referred to as Memoirs and Letters of Lord Combermere. Does appear in digital form online. But under the actual title, Memoirs and Correspondence of Field Marshal Viscount Combermere, from his family papers, 2 volumes, edited by Mary, Viscountess Combermere, and W. Knollys, originally published in the 1860s. Digitized version is available free on the Internet Archive. Open it up for us, please. Welcome to Camo 7. Camo 7 says, Clownfish TV made a good video about what may be coming with the YouTube changes. Yeah, they made a lot of, you can't, it's a lot of changes. Let me put it that way. None of which apply to us, fortunately. Yeah. We're good. Whole channels have been being taken down because because they were using other people's material too much. We don't do that anymore. Because they were selling, their channel existed only as an affiliate farm to send people to other places to buy things. And there are like 4 others. Okay. Let's go. How are we going to look in this? Search? How do we search in here? Search here for Chase. Chase. What vault? Search for vault. That ought to get it, right? Okay. Yep, Anna Maria's remains. Oh, Parish Church of Wrenbury. Extraordinary occurrence in a vault at Christ Church, Lord Combermere Place to be relieved. French fleet. Okay, next. Where's it next? That's where they put all the, in old books, sometimes they put all the topics all together, like sort of like a table of contents. This table of contents being on page, looks like 369. Mysterious occurrence on 381, continuing 382. Christ Church, I see. Okay, we want page 381. Can we go there by clicking this? Indeed. All right. Let's move this over here. Vault being highlighted everywhere, of course. Green Tea says Meta is activating their new invasive policy that says they can have access and use all your communications. It's automatic opt-in. You must manually opt out. That's true, people. Go to your Facebook settings and change and opt out of those settings. And Meta if you have it. And I think Google is doing the same thing. Google part of Meta? I don't think Google's part of Meta yet. Whatever happened to monopolies being against the law? On his arrival in Barbados, the inhabitants had been at intervals startled by reports of mysterious occurrences in a family vault of Christ Church, where it was said some supernatural agency always upset or displaced the coffins deposited there. No black man would approach the burying ground near nightfall. Women whispered wonderful stories of apparitions, and children were threatened with its horrors to ensure their good behavior. Lord Combermere, hearing of the terror occasioned by these rumors, and ascertaining that the coffins had actually been several times displaced, resolved on investigating the matter personally. The family to whom the vault belonged were anxious to have it examined. Jordan Cogburn says, it's because they monopolize the federal government. No kidding, man. Good point. Thank you, Jordan. We're talking, that's corporate talk. Corporate monopolies. Corporations owning the government, which they do right now. The family to whom the vault belonged were anxious. Barbados is formed of calcareous rock, which is coral, over which lies a very inconsiderable depth of earth. But that portion of the island immediately connected with our story, namely Christ Church, and the adjacent burying ground, stands upon a shelf of coral which rises to an eminence of 100 feet above the level of the sea. The church, dedicated to our Savior, is one of 11 founded 2 centuries since, when various members of the district erected family vaults in the burying grounds appointed to each church. From the nature of the foundation, these tombs were formed partially above, partially below the surface. You wouldn't think water could come through the coral. You wouldn't think so. A circumstance which may have served to protect them from the fury of the hurricanes that from time to time have devastated the island. The vault in question belonged to the family of the Honorable Colonel Chase. It was constructed of masonry composed of the large sandstone of the island. I guess that means coral, which nearly resembles our Portland stone, connected by cement, which in the course of a few years had hardened so completely as to render the walls as solid as if formed of entire stone. The roof and flooring were constructed in the same way and of the same material. The sides inclining inwards towards the top left the roof smaller than the base, which was 12 feet long by 6.5 broad. In the fourth side was formed the doorway, the masonry projecting at the bottom, and gradually decreasing towards the top, forming an inclined plane, against which rested a large slab of solid stone forming the door. This was fastened round with cement to prevent removal, for it was necessary to break the cement before sliding this stone door aside. Immediately inside, 2 or more steps descended to the basement. On the occasion of an interment in this vault, in 1812, those engaged in opening it to receive the body were astonished to find that 2 of the coffins had been removed from their places. One large leaden one lay upon the ground, while that of an infant was thrown from one side to the opposite corner. The black laborers became alarmed and hastened Why does it not go one more page? Oh, that's... How can I go by page number? What page number is this? 8 out of 19? That can't be true. What page is it here? Something 36, I guess 386, 387. How do I go just one page, though? 388, I guess it'll go, since vaults everywhere. They hastened to the church officials to relate this singular circumstance. But no credence was given to their story, and it was imagined that, actuated by a love of mischief, these men had upon the last occasion, in order to create a sensation, entered the vault before closing it, disturbed the coffins, and left them in this disorder. Vain were their protestations of innocence, and even the known horror which all black men attached to death and burial places was not accepted as a confirmation of their assertions. They were accordingly severely reprimanded. Yeah, right. And the church officials, fearing lest they should be censured for neglect, determined to keep strict watch over this particular vault for the future. Blame it on the black man. And endeavored to prevent the knowledge of what had transpired from circulating beyond those immediately concerned. They consequently acted with the greatest caution at the closing of the door after the burial had taken place, having previously seen the coffins rearranged and the vault restored to its wonted order. They further satisfied themselves of the impossibility of ingress by any other than the legitimate means, sliding the huge stone door aside. Sure, slaves are going to want to play tricks on the white man. Yeah, right. 4 years and 2 months had elapsed when death again visited the Chase family, and the vault was destined to receive another inmate, a tiny coffin with its baby tenant. The officials eagerly repaired to the spot. External examination proved that the door had not been disturbed since last closed. All appeared exactly as when they had left it. The cement around the entrance was solid as the stone it secured. No crack in any of the walls warranted any suspicion of violence. And yet when the door was removed, the vault displayed even greater confusion than on the previous occasion. This was too serious an occurrence to be longer overlooked, and it was felt that the family ought to be apprised of it, and the perpetrators of the trick discovered, if possible, and punished. After examining the vault and questioning the masons very closely, the family, now informed of all circumstances, were disposed to treat the matter lightly. The vault consequently was rearranged and closed after the body of the infant had been deposited there. Scarcely 2 months elapsed before the remains of a relative were removed from another parish to be laid in this vault. It was opened, and again a mysterious confusion prevailed. The coffins were replaced and the vault again closed. 2 years and 8 months passed away when death called for another consignment to this tomb. The door was removed, and the interior for a third time displayed a strange disarrangement of the coffins. It was now regarded more seriously than hitherto. 3, don't they mean 4? They should say 4. First, they just detailed 4, and I guess because the first one was blamed on the black man, they don't have to take that into account. Or maybe he's just not a very good writer. Or the writer was not a very good writer. It was now regarded more seriously than hitherto, and the account of the mystery spread so rapidly that not only all inhabitants of Bridgetown, but of the whole island were interested. Thousands visited the spot. Curiosity was at its height. And the news... It didn't go on. I clicked the wrong place. And the news... Oh, I gotta go to Vault. And the news having reached Government House, Lord Combermere stated his intention to be present at the approaching interment. Accordingly, attended by his aide-de-camp, he visited the vault. In his presence, every part of the floor was sounded to ascertain that no subterranean passage nor entrance was concealed. Kitten? False alarm. She can't get in. The door is locked. I don't understand why I keep imagining a cat brushing against my leg. In his presence, every part of the floor was sounded. It was found to be perfectly firm and solid. No crack was even apparent. The walls, when examined, proved to be thoroughly secure. No fracture was visible, and the 3 sides, together with the roof and flooring, presented a structure as solid as if formed of entire slabs of stone. The displaced coffins were rearranged. The new tenant of that dreary abode was deposited, and when the mourners retired with the funeral procession, the floor was carefully sanded with fine white sand in the presence of Lord Combermere and the assembled crowd. The door was slid into its wonted position, and with the utmost care the new cement was laid on so as to secure it. When the masons had completed their task, the governor made several impressions in the cement with his own seal. Many impressions, and many of those attending added various private marks. Satisfied now that no one could gain access to the vault without betraying his visit, the people departed. But the interest in this strange occurrence continued, furnishing a constant topic of conversation. The greatest curiosity was expressed as the result, and numerous conjectures arose regarding the phenomenon, some suggesting volcanic power, others expressing a superstitious belief in superhuman agency, while many still continued to attribute the mischief to the cunning of the black man. Right. The black slaves were cunning. Like, what's that going to get them? Not good things. So great a commotion did the occurrence make in the island, and so many expressed impatience to test the possibility of trickery by the reopening of the tomb, that Lord Combermere, who participated in this general curiosity, consented to have it examined, and the opening was fixed for the 18th of April, 1820, just 9 months and 11 days after the period of its closing. So there was so much hullabaloo, there was so much talk in the press about this incident, and possibly international press, that he felt compelled, before the year was up, only 9 months into the year, to reopen the tomb, to reopen and violate the sanctity of it before the end even of a year, before someone could grieve for their loved one for a whole year, which I've heard some say is necessary to miss someone in all 4 seasons before fully coming to terms with their departure, in which I have yet to experience, but I'm working on it. Back to the text. Barbados has seldom witnessed such a gathering as that assembled in Christ Church district on that day. The towns were deserted and thousands hastened to the scene. Every spot, every avenue, every foot of ground was crowded in and around the churchyard. The scorching rays of the sun blazed forth in tropical splendor upon that sea of living forms. Europeans and black men, all crowded together in their varied attires and scarcely less varied complexions, upon the brow of a hill, with the massive stone tombs rising here and there above them, and the old church standing forth in somber relief, as if a connecting link between the living and the dead, made the scene altogether one which beggared description, while perhaps its peculiar interest was in the death-like silence that reigned over it, the silence of mute anxiety and superstitious awe. Lord Combermere now arrived, and if his own interest in the mystery could have failed in inducing him to seek the reopening of the vault, the assembled masses gave ample testimony of the universal gratification conferred by his intervention. So to hell with the grieving people, the grieving family. He at once proceeded to examine the structure. All was secure, and the vault appeared exactly as when he had left it after being closed. The cement was unbroken, and the large impressions of the governor's seal were as sharp and perfect as when made, but now hardened into stone. Each person present who had before made private marks satisfied himself that they were untouched and unaltered, and the command having been given, the masons proceeded to break the cement and slide off the door. Elder says Kitty is astral projecting. The cement yielded as usual to their instruments, but when they endeavored to remove the stone, it resisted with unwonted weight. Increased force was applied, but it remained immovable. For a moment all hands were paralyzed, and a look of wondering display passed from each to each, but it was only for a moment. The next excitement lent a powerful energy to their efforts, and the stone yielded half an inch, enough to afford a glimpse inside. Nothing was distinctly visible in the darkness of its buried night. The tomb being, what would you say? What is that called? It's not a synonym. It's what is it? It's a where it is what you say. Tomb equals buried night. Still, the light which entered through the narrow crevice seemed to cut across some black object close to the portal, so near that the thread-like ray lay brightly visible, prevented by this massive black substance from dispersing itself into the reigning darkness within. Simile, I think it is. Anybody else guess? No one else guessed. Terror a second time palsied the energy of those engaged in this operation. Suspense deepened the intensity of interest and awe which transfixed the anxious spectators. Every breath was hushed, lest they should fail to catch the first whisper of those near the tomb that might offer a solution to the problem before them. Increased force was tried to remove the stone, and inch by inch it yielded, till it was slid sufficiently aside to admit of a person's entering, when it was discovered that a huge leaden coffin was standing upon its head, with the end resting upon the middle of the stone door. Through this coffin, which it required 7 or 8 men to move, though this coffin, which it required 7 or 8 men to move, was thrown from its central place and left in this remarkable position. Yet the sand on the floor bore no trace of footprint, or of having been in any way disturbed. The coffin of an infant had been hurled with such force against the opposite wall near which it was lying that a deep indentation had been made in the stonework by the corner which struck it. The Chase family immediately ordered the coffins to be removed and buried in separate graves, after which the vault was abandoned and has never been used since. Lord Combermere had long made up his mind not to remain beyond 3 years in the West Indies, and at the commencement of 1820, he left. I will abbreviate the rest of that for us. Okay, let's see if we can get that other guy's account. Being unpublished reminiscence by a certain Nathan Lucas. Let's just say reminiscence. We won't tell AI it's unpublished, or else it'll get the wrong idea. Believe me, it will. Thank you, Synchro. Much appreciated, Mike. Thank you. So we're copying this. Is it copied yet? No, let's copy it now. Reminiscence of by a certain Nathan Lucas. Is there a source for the related reminiscence by a certain Nathan Lucas? Yes, there's a claimed eyewitness account attributed to Nathan Lucas, but no verified original text is currently available online. Here's what credible secondary sources say about it. An unpublished first-hand account by Nathan Lucas, who claimed to be present at the opening of the vault in April 1820. Which was what we just read, right? Where is that? Right here. Yeah, 1820. Let me make sure here. Does it have a date? Where's it? Wow, it says, was it April he visited? $1820, correct. The date was fixed for April 1820, just 9 months after it was closed at that during that previous burial. Okay. Some secondary books and collections mention Lucas's description. Oddities, a book of unexplained facts, indicating an eyewitness narrative exists. They do not provide the actual text. Skeptical investigations. Some people say, though he's cited as an eyewitness, his original report has never been located, meaning it's known only through later references by others, which conflicts with this. Some secondary books and collection mention Lucas's description. Various compendiums cite a description by the Honorable Nathan Lucas of the scene at the last opening. List of collections meeting the criteria of number 2. Including links. I forgot I already told it to include links. Searching the web. We have some comments up here. Jordan Cogburn says, 1 solar flare and it's back to basics. AI is scary. There are vast swaths of the labor market that can be completely taken over by AI. And when that happens, if history is any guide, it ain't going to make the lives of most people any easier. All going to go to the top 1%. There's another comment here from the Plateau. Oh, I called that up. There's one here from Elder. Jordan Cogburn says universal basic income won't be much. Get creative. Collections that include or explicitly reproduce, yes. And are available online, excellent. Describes and notes that is it attested. It's attested by Thomas Orderson, the Reverend. In the chapter of Barbados Mystery, the manuscript is the only really dependable account, Nathan Lucas's. Describes it as recently unearthed. And states, the text then includes material from the manuscript by Lucas in the sketches of the Chase Vault section. This one says, states this document is printed in full in Aspinall's Pocket Guide to the West Indies. Requires the original Lucas manuscript, soft-knotted transcription. Direct link cannot be confirmed from the sources above. These sources describe a manuscript being held privately in the possession of specific individuals, rather than linking to allows to scan of the manuscript. I don't need a scan. I don't need a scan. I just need a reprint. Printed in Aspinall's Pocket Guide. This document is printed. Oddities, a book of unexplained fact, but that's in oddities. What about, is this available online? Aspinall's Pocket Guide to the West Indies. Is the following document available online? In which supposedly Oddity says Nathan Lucas's entire document is printed in Aspinall's Pocket Guide. Full text downloadable. Excellent. It's also searchable then. So let's try to get the full document. Boy, I'm getting hot. I don't know why. Not that warm outside. Coffee. All right. We want the whole thing, man. We want it all. So go to this link and search on Nathan Lucas. So we'll search on Nathan Lucas. We'll go here, Internet Archive. Not oddities. Down here, Aspinalls. Open link. Search Aspinall. I already forgot his name. Nathan Lucas, right? Guy has 2 first names. No, wait. Something's wrong here. Let's go back one. We can't go back one. Open it again. Open link. Go. 0 results. It says 0 results. How can I say it's there? Full text downloadable claims. AI for you. Archive host of readable scans. Maybe we're searching for too much here. Aspinall's Pocket. How about just Pocket Guide to the West Indies? Try that. There it is. Aspinall's Pocket Guide to the West Indies. Okay. Good. Go there. Good. Ooh, I love that cover. Check out that cover, man. Single page, please. View 1-page view, 2-page views, or bigger. Looks like. We want to search it for Nathan Lucas. That's his name, right? Nathan Lucas. Okay. How do we search in here? Here. Nathan Lucas. No matches found. How about Nathan? No matches found for Nathan Lucas. How many of these did Aspinall write? Lucas. Aha. Name of a town. Garrison, Melbourne, and Lucas. And that's the only occurrence. So no, not true. So this citation is incorrect where it says, Rupert Gould says in his book, Oddities, a Book of Unexplained Facts, the Honorable Nathan Lucas wrote an eyewitness description and states that this document is printed in full in Aspinall's Pocket Guide to the West Indies. However, it is not. We could look for vault. Look for vault, please. It worked last time. Come on, vault. The Vault of St. Peter. Chase. Okay, we found the Chase story. It looks like it starts at page 110. Let's go there. Page 110, get rid of that. I need more bigger. I need it more bigger. I can't do that, but I can zoom in. For those of a psychological turn of mind, a visit to the churchyard near Oysterstown is a peculiar interest. A strange occurrence took place there. Elder says, every time Bill says pocket guide, my mind says Tobin's spirit guide from Ghostbusters. A strange occurrence took place there, the cause of which has never been satisfactorily explained. To quote Sir Robert Schomburg, on 2 occasions, when the death of a member of the family of the late Colonel Chase had rendered it necessary to open the family vault, it was found that the coffins had been removed from their places, and as no signs were observed that the vault had been opened without the knowledge of the family, it excited great astonishment. Before the vault was walled up again, the coffins were restored to their original positions. Shortly afterwards, it was requisite to open the vault again, for an admission of a member of the family, when the coffins were found to have been displaced as on the former occasion. The family now became anxious to ascertain the truth, and particular pains were taken in securing the wall, and fine sand was thrown over the floor of the vault, so that if a person should enter it from any other part than the usual entrance, marks might be left behind. Lord Combermere was residing in 1820 in the neighborhood of the church. That a new bit of information. And having been told of this mysterious circumstance, he made unexpectedly an application to the rector, that would be Anderson, or whatever his name is, to have the vault reopened. When, to the astonishment of all present, the coffins, to the number of 5 or 6, were found scattered about, and one of the largest thrown on its side across the passage, so that had not the door opened outwards, an entrance could not have been effected except by removing the slab on the top, which is of immense weight. The private marks made on the previous occasion were undisturbed, and as this was the 4th occasion of a similar disturbance without the cause being explained, the family resolved on removing the bodies from the vault, and some of them were interred in the parish churchyard. Only some of them. The vault was filled in and closed, as after this occurrence it was feared that it might give rise to undue excitement among the population. Welcome to Takahama Olsen, too, whose nerves were naturally worked up to a high pitch of tension by this gruesome episode. Most of the numerous gullies are of great interest and beauty. Is that all? 2 out of 5. And that's it looks like. No mention of Nathan. Next. And only one more mention of the word vault. That being in the index, Chase Colonel Family Vault. So, no, it is not in the pocket guide to the West Indies. Is there a Nathan? What's Lucas? Is there a Lucas listed in the index? Page. There's the page flipper. HIJKL. Is there a Lucas? There's a Lucia. Welcome, Big Test, my friend. Good to see you, sir. There's Lucia, but no Lucas. Lucia looks like it might be a proper noun name of a town or something like that, because all it says is Lucia. Is there a Nathan? It wouldn't be on her first name anyway. Napoleon Bonaparte's there. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, no, he was wrong when he wrote his book. Rupert Gould here was wrong. Or lying. Oh, here we go. Algernon Aspinall. West Indian Tales of Old. Maybe he got the titles mixed up. Instead of being in Aspinall's Tales of the West Indies, or whatever it is, Pocket Guide to the West Indies, it was actually in Aspinall's West Indian Tales of Old. Let's look at that. Full text off. We're looking for vault. Control F. No. Remove. How do we search it? Here. Control F. Better. Orderson is the reverend's name, not Anderson. Orderson. Looking for a vault. The mysterious vault of Christ Church, listed on page 226. And the word vault mentioned 34 times. Let's undo that. Good. Let's go to page 226. Thank you. Can we go there, please? 226. A Barbados mystery. For many years, no one was buried in the vault. But in July of 1807, the rector was asked to allow the remains of a Mrs. Thomasina Goddard to be placed in it. The necessary permission having been granted, this is the very first burial under the auspices of the Chase family, when the Chase family owned the vault. The funeral took place on the 31st of the month. In the following year, when the vault was opened to receive the leaden coffin of Mary Anna Maria Chase, the infant daughter of Thomas Chase, Mrs. Goddard's coffin was in its proper place, and nothing unusual seemed to have happened. When, however, the vault was again unsealed in 1812, on the occasion of the funeral of Dorcas Chase, another daughter of Thomas Chase, all was confusion within. To the utter amazement of the funeral party, the coffins of Mrs. Goddard and Mary Chase were found to have been violently disturbed. That of the infant being head downwards in the opposite corner of the vault, opposite to the corner in which it had been placed. The funeral ceremony was, however, proceeded with, and the vault once more hermetically sealed, the disturbance being attributed to the mischievous act of some black laborers who attended the previous interment. Nothing further of importance appears to have taken place in connection with the vault until 4 years later, though Thomas Chase was himself laid to rest in it, though Thomas Chase himself was laid to rest of it in 1812, on August the 9th. On September the 25th, 1816, it was again opened, this time for the reception of the coffin of Samuel Brewster Ames, another infant. So they have an interstitial occurrence here, an intervening occurrence where there's no movement, which is interesting. When the stone was removed, the laborers were horrified to find that the coffins again were disarranged. Suspicion once more rested on the men, but they stoutly protested their innocence. And the coffins having been replaced in their former positions, the vault was again closed. Little else was now talked of in the island than the coffin affair at Christ Church. The blacks, on the one hand, were convinced that the disturbance was due to ghosts, of which they have a pious horror, while the white population with equal certainty attributed it to the mischievous pranks of some practical jokers. The affair continued to be a constant topic of discussion, and interest in it had by no means died out when, on November the 17th, 1816, the body of Samuel Brewster, who had been unalived during the insurrection of the slaves in the preceding April, was removed to the vault from St. Philip, where it first lay. Crowds flocked to the churchyard and, from a respectful distance, watched the opening of the tomb. This is 4 years before the big hullabaloo with Lord Combermere. The ponderous stone was slid aside, and it was at once seen that there had been a repetition of the former disturbances. Mrs. Goddard's coffin had fallen to pieces, but the leaden coffins which were still there were still whole, but again in a state of much confusion and disorder. All efforts to elucidate the mystery having failed, the remains of the wooden coffin were tied in a bundle and were placed between the elder Miss Clark's coffin and the wall. The leaden coffins were then restored to their proper places, and the slab was again firmly cemented over the entrance. Thousands visited the churchyard to see the mysterious vault, and the excitement throughout the length and breadth of the island became so intense that the governor, Lord Combermere, decided to be present at an interment, that of Thomasina Clark, on July 7th, 1819. He accordingly went to the churchyard, attended by his aide-de-camp. The vault was again opened, and for the fourth time the leaden coffins were discovered to be in a state of confusion, though the remains of Mrs. Goddard's coffin were undisturbed. In other words, stacked wood was undisturbed, and the other coffins were tossed around. Very interesting. The governor immediately caused every part of the floor to be sounded to ascertain whether any subterranean passage or entry was concealed. It was, however, found to be perfectly firm and solid, and not even a crack was to be seen. All attempts to solve the mystery failed. The displaced coffins were rearranged, and after the mourners had left, the floor was carefully sanded with white sand, with the object of tracing any movements, however slight. The door was slid into its place and secured with new cement, on which the governor made several impressions with his own seal, while many of those present added various private marks. The party then withdrew. Interest in the strange affair was maintained, and the reopening of the vault was eagerly awaited. Then came the scene of which Mr. Nathan Lucas was an eyewitness. Excuse me. Must have juice. Must have water. Then came the scene of which Mr. Nathan Lucas was an eyewitness. So, where is Nathan Lucas first mentioned? Did I not read the letter already? This is on page 227. Is Nathan Lucas in this? 6 of 7. Where's... No, that's the first mention of his name. Okay, good. Let's remove that. Oh, we leave it. Oh, guess it's not going to stay. On April 18th, 1820, Lord Combermere was staying with Mr. Robert Boucher Clark at Elridge's plantation, next to Christ Church. And at noon, when the blacks were returning from the field, conversation turned upon the vault. After an animated discussion, it was suggested that a visit should be paid to the churchyard. This was no sooner said than done. Taking with them 8 or 10 of the blacks, the party, which consisted of the governor, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cotton, and the Honorable Nathan Clark. It doesn't say Clark here, but I assume that's left out of this translation, or this version, because it tends to drop things at the end of a sentence before a page number. From the manuscript of the Honorable Nathan Lucas. Situation of the coffins when the vault was closed July 7, 1819, in the presence of the Reverend Thomas H. Orderson. Situation of the coffins on April 18th, April 1820, when the vault was reopened in the presence of the Honorable Lord Combermere, Mr. Clark, Mr. Rowland, Mr. Cotton, and Mr. Lucas. Oh, he was there. No kidding. And this just says, it's just a list of the people in the coffins. Certified T.H. Orderson, D.D., Rector of the Parish of Christ Church. Lucas repaired to the churchyard. The Reverend Thomas Orderson, Rector of the Parish. So this is all that Lucas wrote? Oh, so his account is just basically you do a couple pictures, and it looks like he also wrote whose coffin was where, because he has number 1 for Dorcas, number 2 for Thomas, number 3 for one of the infants, number 4 for Samuel Brewster, number 5 for the other infant, number 6 for Thomasina Clarice. So that's the extent of his witness, right? I guess right there. Because it goes on to say, oh wait, he writes this as well. On the side of number 4, there were the remains of an old wooden coffin tied up between the wall and the coffin. And these were found in their original situation. Wow, now I'm getting the chills. When the vault was opened in 1820. So he was there when it was opened in 1820. There's still the remains of the old wooden coffin tied up between the wall and the coffin. I think it was the case where it was a lead coffin inside a wooden coffin. The wood had disintegrated, and the wood was put between the lead coffin and the wall, the nearest wall. That's what I believe was done. Yeah, I just got chills. He saw that wood was still in the same place, tied up between the wall and the coffin. Now that's crazy. If it was water, that wood would have moved, obviously. If it was an earthquake, that wood would have moved. This is just amazing. This is amazing. And we had to come this far in the original documents to prove that this is something supernatural, something truly paranormal. Anyway, there's a little bit left of Lucas's eyewitness here. Besides the listing and the certification. Actually, this is by Orderson. So Orderson said, Orderson is the witness to the wood, and the coffins had been moved twice before their last inspection. That from the Reverend as well. I think he's talking about the two previous openings when it had appeared in disarray. Lucas repaired to the churchyard. The Reverend Thomas Orderson, rector of the parish, was sent for and soon appeared on the scene. While the party was further reinforced by Major Finch, the governor's military secretary. On arrival at the vault, everything was to all outward appearance just as it had been left on July 7 in the preceding year. Indeed, not one stone appeared to have been touched, and as no one but the members of the small party themselves were aware of this visit to the churchyard, which was made on the spur of the moment, collusion or deception was impossible. Eldergrown says, so the first lady in the tomb, when the others started showing up, was like, this is my tomb, get these others out of here. That from Elder. From Synchro, the vault entity has impressive powers over objects, without leaving a trace, no doubt. The structure was closely examined on all sides. Everything seemed to be secure. The cement was uncracked, and the large impressions of the governor's seal, impressions, so there was more than one, were as sharp and as perfect as on the day on which they were made, the cement now being as hard as stone. Each person present who on the former occasion had made his private mark satisfied himself that it had not been tampered with. Orders were then given for the removal of the slab. The cement was with difficulty broken, and pressure was brought to bear upon the stone, but the united efforts of the laborers failed at first to move it. This corroborates the governor's account. A hush fell on the spectators. Then a renewed attempt was made, and at last the marble responded to the efforts of the panting black men and yielded a few inches. By degrees it was moved aside sufficiently to enable one of the party to enter the vault. The reason for the failure to move the stone at the first attempt was not far to seek. Resting against it on the inside was one of the massive leaden coffins, a coffin which took several men's united strength to move. It was standing upside down. And yet there were no footprints in the sand. Small wonder then that the opinion prevailing among the black men was that the disturbances were due to a supernatural agency. To his manuscript, the Honorable Nathan Lucas appended the following memorandum signed by the rector, Reverend T.H. Orderson. Which may perhaps assist the curious in clearing up the mystery, the true key to which has not yet been found. Nor yet to this day, my friend, nor yet to this day. In England, at this day, the body is first enclosed in a shell, that in lead, and lastly, a coffin of state without all ornamented, etc. In Barbados, it is otherwise. The body is put at once into a coffin of state, and that is enclosed in lead, at the grave, and is without the wooden coffin. That's the way besides Mrs. Goddard's coffin, all the others were just of lead. Hers was, I think, must have been with the lead one inside the wooden one. And that is enclosed in lead at the grave. Enclosed in lead at the grave. Of course, right? They must be sealed right at the grave, right? And is without the wooden coffin. The children's coffins were placed upon bricks in the vault. Mr. Chase's on the rock bottom of the vault. Now, how could one of the leaden coffins be set up how could one of the leaden coffins be set upon end against the wall? Why were the coffins of wood in situ? And why was the bundle of Mrs. Goddard's decayed coffin found where it had been left? Wood certainly would first float. There was no vestige of water to be discovered in the vault, no marks where it may have been, and the vault is in a level churchyard, by no means in a fall, much less in a run of water. By no means in a fall, much less in a run of water. In other words, no running water. Earthquake could not have done this without leveling the churchyard to the ground. Being informed some time after that a similar occurrence had been said to have happened in England, I had the account looked for, and the following copy was given to me. I did not see the work from whence it was extracted, but I have no reason to doubt the accuracy of it. And then he relays this other account, which we will read. From the European Magazine for September 1815. The Curious Vault at Stanton in Suffolk. And 2 years after, blah, 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 blah. Whence arose this operation of which it is certain no one had a hand? It was occasioned by water, as is imagined, though no sign of it appeared at the different periods of time that the vault was opened. The following is the statement of Mr. Lucas as regards the Christ Church vault. I examined the walls, the arch, and every part of the vault, and found every part old and similar. And a mason in my presence struck every part of the bottom with his hammer, and all was solid. I confess myself at a loss to account for the movements of these leaden coffins. Thieves certainly had no hand in it. And as for any practical wit or hoax, too many were requisite to be trusted with the secret for it to remain unknown. And as for black men having anything to do with it, their fear of the dead and everything belonging to them preclude any idea of the kind. All I know is that it happened, and that I was an eyewitness of the fact. And he says this with 3 exclamation points. This is from his hand. Sir Robert Schomburg briefly tells the coffin story in his History of Barbados. Lady Combermere, inspired by an anonymous pamphlet entitled Death Deeds, refers to it in her life of her husband. And Mr. Robert Rees contributed an account of it to these pages of Once a Week. None of these writers attempts, however, to solve the mystery. Mr. Andrew Lang told of a similar disturbance of coffins, which is said to have occurred on the island of Uzel in the Baltic, but he could give no explanation of it. In other words, he couldn't relate the tale sufficiently, I guess. And that's it. It goes to another legend. Isn't that something? Green Tea asks, what is your opinion of what caused it, if you had to choose? I have no idea. To me, it's the wood and the eyewitness account that this, and the number of eyewitness accounts. There's more than seems to have been indicated. There's the first story, one of the first 2 stories we read said there was only 2 eyewitnesses. There's actually 3. There's Lord Combermere, the Reverend O, I'll call him because I can't remember his name anymore, and Nathan Lucas. There's 3 eyewitnesses to this. And one of them is saying that the wood was found undisturbed from one occurrence to the next, but not the lead coffins. So there is no explanation that is not paranormal, that is not supernatural. It may have been the curse of what was intimated in one of the first stories, that the problem started after the girl was interred who supposedly had taken her own life. So I'm thinking it was after that. And then she was followed within the year by her father, who was supposedly the reason why the daughter had taken her own life. So a lot of bad energy in that tomb. A lot of bad energy in that crypt. Okay, guys, I have no idea if Dark Sayings has a live tonight or not. I bet that Tina is indisposed at this time. Otherwise, I'm sure she would be here. But if you've been following Peter, he's on in 30 seconds. He's going live here on YouTube at Dark Sayings. So be there or be square. And until next Saturday, may God bless and protect you all.